All right, looks like we're live. How y'all feeling?
Great.
All right, cool. Hello, if y'all are just joining us, this is Torres. Welcome to Frame by Frame Film Club. Today we are discussing The Watermelon Woman. We have our lovely host, Debria, great friend of mine. She's going to be moderating the conversation. So I'm going to just, before we start, talk about a few things. First of all, if you have been with us for a while, you know that our website had the wordpress.com in it. That is no more. You can now find us at framexframefilm.club. So that's our new website. And you can also follow us on Instagram, Frame by Frame Film Club. We have a Facebook page as well. Any information that you need, if we got it, it's yours. It's on these websites, on our Instagram. Also, I just want to say I'm so excited for this topic. I'm so excited for our guest. And Frame by Frame is gonna keep going. As long as y'all are here, we're here. So thank you. I'm gonna hand it off to Debria.
Okay. All right, so I guess we can just start introducing ourselves. So I'll go first. So my name is Debria Robinson. I am from Columbia, South Carolina. I am a filmmaker, but I mostly focus on horror films. And right now I'm trying to get into documentaries. It's a little overwhelming, but ever since I watched this film, it kind of like bring ease to it because she's doing a documentary. So that's the main reason why I wanted us to discuss this film today. So if one of y'all wanted to take over.
Sure. I'm Janelle Rohan. Let's see. I have a history in Columbia, South Carolina because, I'm not from there, but I worked at the NIC as director of programming back in 2013, so a long time ago. Okay. But I am a film critic. I occasionally write for Shadow and Act, and I went to UCLA Film School. So I'm just excited and psyched to be here talking about this movie.
Nice. So I'm Eleni Palace. I'm from upstate New York, so I don't have any sort of geographical ties. I did do graduate work in Philadelphia, though, so I feel like this film is like coming home a little bit. It's such a Philly film.
I'm currently living in Philadelphia, and I loved rewatching it and just knowing each of the areas that she was in and talking about.
Oh, wonderful. All right, so off, live, we'll have to discuss where you are and all the Philly things, but wonderful. So right now I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm an assistant professor of English and film studies at UT Knoxville. I've taught this film and had wonderful experiences with this film with students. I've written about this film. It's a fave. Excited to be here.
All right. So I want to first say thank you both for coming to this. We had a hard time trying to find somebody, so I really do appreciate it. So I guess we'll just go with the first question, which is, how did you receive the film the first time you saw it versus how you receive it now?
I guess I can start to answer this. So I first saw it when I was in graduate school, which was like a decade ago. And I wasn't necessarily shocked because I think by that time, some of these images had started to enter, the media space. But I thought about it in context of in 1996. And I did think it was rather progressive and groundbreaking for the time period that it was in. I mean, obviously, she was the first, Black lesbian filmmaker to have a feature-length film. So I guess now, seeing it again, I'm amazed by how relevant it still is in terms of intersectionality, which has been a really big discussion over the last few years. And this is going to sound really shallow, but the fashion, all that stuff has come back.
Oh yeah.
Watching the 90s style. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like this is something I'm watching that's current, in a way.
I was going to say the same thing, honestly, that the fashion hasn't it's not dated anymore. It's come back around. But yeah, definitely. I think for students too, watching them, or just anybody watching, being able to watch someone watch it for the first time, I think I got to vicariously re-experience the like disappointment of that ending title card where, and we can spoil the film, right? I hope. I mean, this is
not a no spoiler situation, is it?
Wonderful. Yeah. I hope not, that people have seen the film, right? That like the first couple times the film was shown, the title card wasn't there saying it was a fiction. Okay, wonderful. And then, so watching some of my students be sad about it over again, like to sort of re-experience the, like wanting the Watermelon Woman to be real. I don't know. It was a sort of emotional play in the film. I guess if you're not, like Janelle, right? If you're not in graduate school, being ready for the context of the film, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I teach cinema at the high school level though. And so I was unable to show this movie to my students, but I would love to be able to see it through some of their eyes, especially some of the queer students that I have, that I know, like we have a LGBTQ plus alliance at school, and they're always looking for ways to, or content that's going to make them open up their understanding of what they're experiencing, but also like in the context of being Black students, Black queer students.
Yeah. And I guess I should let you ask another question, I guess, but like, you can't show your high school students this because of the sex scene, right? Is it a sort of?
Yeah, so they're pretty like strict. I mean, I do show some rated R movies, but I would not be able to show the sex scene in 11th grade.
Right.
They're not happy about that. Like whenever I tell them we can't watch this, because they're like, we're grown, but I don't need a bunch of parents, West Philadelphian parents after me.
Got it. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so I've only seen the film like one time, but my first time watching it, I feel like it really opened my eyes that doing a documentary is like kind of a process. Like you might not have all the answers all at once. And sometimes you got to go and you got to find and search, and you learn a lot about who you are in the process of doing it. So I really appreciated the film in that aspect of it. And I think we also had like a clip that we wanted to watch, and I guess we can talk about it after we watch it.
The suspense.
I'm like, what clip is it? Oh, so many good ones.
Okay, well, do you guys remember the part where she is introducing Watermelon Woman? Like she gets in front of the camera and she's just like, I'm a filmmaker. Well, I'm not really a filmmaker.
Right, in the beginning, sort of.
Yeah. So what is y'all take on that? As a Black filmmaker myself, I feel like it's very hard to really sit there and call myself a filmmaker and feel unprofessional because I don't have like a lot of things going for myself. So like, how did y'all perceive that part of the film?
It's a great mix too, because it's that opening shift between the opening like 16 millimeter part where she's at the wedding and videographing, like sort of being the videographer for the wedding. And then the format changes and you can tell she's like setting up the shot and then comes in front and sits down and like pins the microphone to her shirt too, I think. So like there's something about taking on like a video, especially in like the mid-late 90s, video felt like this opportunity for filmmakers who had been left out of Hollywood and couldn't get budgets for things to be like, okay, this is an accessible format to be like, yes, we can have filmmakers that don't have enormous budgets that can do interesting things. And that's part of why I think the like video and the video store. So like technology, I think is one part of that. I know there's a lot to it though.
Yeah. I agree. And I also, should I wait until after the
Oh,
clip?
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Cheryl, and I'm a filmmaker. Nah, I'm not really a filmmaker, but I have a videotaping business with my friend Tamara, and I work at a video store, so I'm working on being a filmmaker. The problem is I don't know what I want to make a film on. I know it has to be about Black women because our stories have never been told. So I've been renting movies. No, I haven't been renting movies, but I get movies from the video store that I work at. And I've taken all these films out from the 30s and 40s with Black actresses in them, like Hattie McDaniel and Louise Beavers. And in these films, in some of the films, the Black actresses aren't even listed in the credits. And I was just totally shocked by that. So in this one film that came into the store, Plantation Memories, I saw the most beautiful Black mammy named Elsie. And I just had to show this, so watch.
Oh, don't cry, Missy. Master Charles is coming back for sure. I know he is. Do you really think so, Elsie? Oh, yes, Missy Barbara, I know he is. I prayed to God all night long, and this morning, his little angel told me that he was coming back. Back to you.
Her name, the Watermelon Woman. That's right, Watermelon Woman. Is Watermelon Woman her first name, her last name, or is it her whole name? I don't know, but girlfriend has it going on. And I think I've figured out what my project's gonna be on. I'm gonna make a movie about her. I'm gonna find out what her real name is, who she was and is, everything I can find out about her. Because something in her face, something in the way she looks and moves is serious, is interesting. And I'm gonna just tell you all about it.
Okay.
So I have a few thoughts. So one of the things that I thought about when I watched this clip and then when I watched it again is the fact that she's having this discovery process, like as she's shooting this footage, right? She at the beginning says she doesn't. First of all, she doesn't necessarily know if she can claim herself as a filmmaker, and you watch her like become increasingly like obsessed with this character and then decide in that moment, okay, like I know what my film project is going to be. So I thought that was really interesting that she was like having that process on camera. I also think that the format that this movie is shot in terms of it being like mockumentary and narrative lends to a more immersive experience. So like Eleni, like you were saying with your students, like they were very invested in the Watermelon Woman story because they, in a way, like when we feel like something is real, like you're watching a documentary, you are able to find a lot more empathy for those characters. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that, and Debria, to more specifically to your question in terms of like, when are we able to call ourselves a filmmaker? When are we like, I think this is a typical artist quandary. I think that this is not limited to filmmaking. I as a writer, have experienced the same thing. Can I call myself a writer if I haven't published a novel? Can I call myself a writer if I don't have this, that, or the other, right? If I don't have a website, like, so this is one of those situations I think that just sort of transcends the film medium. And you're definitely not the first or only artist, and you will not be the last to experience this idea of like imposter syndrome or like, I don't know when it's okay for me to claim this title. By the way, now. It's now.
It's true. It's so true. And it's awesome to see Cheryl on screen as opposed to like Cheryl Dunye, the filmmaker behind the film too, that like as the fictionalized version of herself, she enacts all these ways of like coming into her own, like dealing with archives and libraries and research, you know, sort of trying to figure out, like coming against a lot of gatekeeping mechanisms too that have that imposter syndrome sparking feel often for many of us, right? To be like, oh, this institution doesn't feel welcoming or doesn't.
Right. Like I don't have access or the same access as, you know. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. Give me 1 second. All right. Another thing that was pondering me while watching this film is how is it relevant today? I saw a couple points, but I wanted to know what did y'all find relevant nowadays?
So much of it. I mean, I think that the film experienced a resurgence in popularity last year during all of the civil unrest and protesting and things like that, where unfortunately we saw, you know, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. For some reason, that those events ignited an interest in this movie again. And I think that it has to do with like, this is a Black queer woman and she is centering herself in a discussion about who she is or how she sees herself. There's no male gaze here. There's no manipulation, like, you know, marionette, like white puppeteers in the background manipulating these images, as she talks about, you know, in the film. The fact that she's so excited to make this movie, her sort of, I feel like it's like a child, like she's not childish, right? But she's childlike. And I think there's a difference, right? Yeah. She is very curious. She's extremely like determined. I think that that's also shown by the scene where they go to the Clit archives at the center of like, you know what I'm talking about. And she's really like almost mischievous, you know, like she's like, I'm going to like shoot all of the things that I want to shoot in here. And I just love it. She's plucky. And so I think that there's a spirit of activism. There's a spirit of wanting, no longer being accepting of other people telling our stories and other people framing our experiences. And I feel like that's a big part of why this movie is still relevant.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. In a way, I wish it were less relevant, right? If there were a ton of other movies that like came in her wake, right? There's also that moment, it's a small one, but it stuck out when I was teaching it too, as a sort of Cheryl's on location. I forget exactly, it's toward the end of the film, but she's confronted by police officers on the street who misgender her and then accuse her of having stolen her camera equipment. So
right, call her like a crackhead freak.
Exactly. And then the scene ends, it's like a cut to black, and then there's no more discussion. You know, we don't see her sort of arrested or any fallout from that. Like it's just left as a sort of, I don't know, like it's unresolved, and it sort of sits in the film as like she's confronted sort of in these film institutions trying to figure out her identity and her sort of status as a filmmaker, and then also just on the streets of Philadelphia with the police. And then it doesn't come to this sort of conclusion at all. It's just sort of left there like something else she has to deal with. So I think that moment, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you brought that moment up, because it is really important to the film, yet she doesn't treat it as if it's like the impetus for anything, right? In the movie. So like, whereas you have a movie like Queen and Slim, where this thing happens and then that's the whole driving like force behind the narrative. She's just showing this, like you said, as just like a part of her experience of being a Black queer woman in Philadelphia in 1996.
Yeah, like it's incidental. It's not, as you're saying, right, like a narrative climax or a plot point that sort of does anything. It's just there, and that feels, tragic and authentic, but also like one of like the political or kinds of intellectual opportunities of this film for students, especially, or just as viewers, as us, to think about what that does, to not have it be resolved or, I don't know, narratively contained. I also think I saw Cheryl Dunye doing, I think she directed an episode of Lovecraft Country too. So she
did, like probably one of my favorite episodes of that show. Yeah.
Me too. Me too. So it's cool. Like that for me was another, I saw that she directed and I was like, okay, I got to rewatch.
Yeah, she also directed a couple episodes of Queen Sugar. So it's really nice to see that she's still working. I don't know like what other feature films that she's had, but I know that she's had at least, like several.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we know that Tamara and Cheryl have like this really close relationship. How did y'all feel about it that Cheryl did not want to date a white woman? Like, how did that come across you? I thought that was kind of a little strange.
Oh yeah, Tamara didn't want to.
Tamara.
Yeah. Well, I think like when you asked that question, I thought about the term "in the family," and how like even within the LGBT community, there's still like division and like separations like within that marginalized group. And I think it sometimes is natural, especially like back in the 90s, for there to be sort of this cultural like adhesion that happens, and it might not necessarily feel safe. And I feel like for that reason, that was very threatening to Tamara, like for her friend to go outside of that sort of contained space that they created.
On the level of casting too, the fact that it's Guinevere Turner, who's like this like, I don't know, of all these sort of indie low budget films, she's always like the quirky indie girl. So to have her be like not totally accepted, and I don't know, it feels like it also has a commentary on sort of other very white independent films of the 90s. I don't know, there's some sort of Go ahead, sorry.
No, I said it absolutely does. I totally agree with you. I think that that's the way that they start to bring the conversation of white feminism into the discussion.
Right. Because we're like, oh, we know her, and it's like, okay, why do we only know her? Or like, I think she brings up a sort of larger body of films just in her presence there. Yeah.
She's also framed as, I heard someone talking about this, about the film, and I can't remember who, but like this idea of like just beyond just representing like one type of lesbian, right? She's saying like, here's like a lipstick lesbian or like a femme lesbian. And so I'm, just so you guys know, I'm not like slurring. These are terms that come out of, yeah. So, but then there's also, someone who is, and I think also like self-described as butch, which was Tamara, right? And so even in the movie, like she has like a slightly different way of talking about her relationship with other women, right? Like, so like when they're in the library, she's like, I need to get these flowers and this wine because I'm trying to get some, like, almost like mimicking like, so it's so layered. It's showing how like all of these different layers of oppression play out in the way that we express ourselves within these marginalized groups.
And we see that like also in the Clit Archive lady. There's like these sort of other like cluster of characters, or even, I don't know, just the librarian guy, whatever. He's like less.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They're just like other, that feels like a kind of like mosaic of characters that, right, as you're saying, like it gets outside of the monolith of like, oh, the one lesbian character or whatever, you know, to say like there's
showing like diversity within the community. And I think that probably was like exceptionally progressive at that time, like because of the fact that like not only were like gay and lesbian characters, bisexual characters not on like TV and not really in movies, if you ever saw them, it was a very boxed, like very stereotypical depiction. And this just like blows that wide open.
Yeah.
I honestly wish that this was like a more mainstream movie at the time, because I feel like it's so important for people other than cinephiles and like movie, you know, film students to watch.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, which is awesome that it's being programmed here. I think it's awesome that, yeah, that it gets broader reach. Yeah.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Janelle, did you first see it for a class?
Gosh, grad school was so long ago.
Fair enough. That's fine.
I think that I was watching it around the time when I was studying like race films, because of like her discussion about race films and like her conversation with Lee Edwards, the guy who's like an expert on race films, but whose research interestingly didn't include any women, right? It was just very like male centric. And that also points to the fact that like, you know, there's no one, and Malcolm X said it, right? There's no one who is like more oppressed or marginalized than the Black woman, because there's that intersectionality again, right? It's like to be a Black person and a woman and queer is something that is a very unique experience. And then even within that experience, there's so many nuances.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's that the race film aspect of it is why it's another great film to teach, because it does, right, she's saying this is a mammy character, to then talk about those stereotypes that come out of classical Hollywood is like another opportunity of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so right now we have a clip. So we're going to watch it and then we're going to discuss it.
Cool. Can you guys hear it? Because I can't.
It's in your audio, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can't hear it.
The terrifying moment when it's like, is it me?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Should we wait for, oh, yep, cool, sorry.
You know, it's 2 for 1 Monday through Thursday.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time deciding. What do you think? Cleopatra Jones, Jason's Lyric, or a personal best?
Well, Cleopatra Jones is really fun. Why don't you do Cleopatra Jones and Carrie? I think the two go really well together.
No, but Carrie, I hate Sissy Spacek. She's all weird and pale and thin and anorexic in this movie. I kind of like my girls with meat on their bones, you know what I mean? Anyway, I just saw it.
Well, there's always some sci-fi like Aliens, or how about Repulsion with Catherine Deneuve? She goes nuts in her apartment one night.
Oh, I just moved into a new apartment. I don't think I need that.
Well, help yourself. It's 2 for 1.
Okay, thanks for your suggestions.
You're welcome.
So who's the cutie?
Some customer.
She's got a nice bone structure if you're into white girls. Do you think she is or isn't in the family?
Tamara, why are you always constantly clacking women?
We're lesbians, remember, Cheryl? We're into female-to-female attraction. Anyway, you're the one who's supposed to be clocking all the girls. How long has it been since you've been with one anyway?
a week. Remember the emotionally imbalanced Yvette?
Come on, Cheryl. She was not that bad. Besides,
yes,
she called
she was.
Stacy last night and she asked about you.
Oh, she was
Blah,
so
blah, 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 blah. If you two worked as much as you talked, I'd have a chain of video stores by now. Tamara, Cheryl, I'd like to introduce you to your coworker, Annie Hinckley.
Heath. Annie Heath.
Yeah, Annie Heath. She's a Bryn Mawr graduate, right?
Right. It's nice to meet you, Cheryl. It's nice to meet you, Tamara.
I'll tell you what, Cheryl, why don't you help Annie learn the Bob system while waiting on this customer?
Okay.
Miss Attitude, in my office. Let's go.
Okay, so what did y'all think about this film and Tamara's shadiness?
I'm going to grab my charger real quick because something's killing my battery very rapidly, and I don't want to lose you guys. But I can hear you.
Okay.
Wonderful. I like this sort of like, as Janelle was saying, the sort of like in the family moment about like what can or like who counts as, you know, in the family, and like what these different categorizations of people mean to them.
Yeah.
You know, between Tamara and Cheryl. I also just love the way that like part of
Wait, sorry about that.
I was terrified that was going to happen to me, and I'm like, oh, turn it off. So if it happened,
had that guilty like it's me. What was I saying? Oh, just that, like, it's preceded by the moment where Diana's trying to pick a movie, right? That it's like both like picking among film choices and then picking, I don't know, it just felt like something about the selection process, both of like picking out a movie for the evening and then trying to figure out how, you know, you fit in with like who you want to spend the evening with too. I don't know, it's sort of an interesting parallel in that scene. But go for it, Janelle, you had other things too.
I don't necessarily think that like I didn't read that as like shadiness. I feel like the movie is trying to set up a certain type of relationship between Tamara and Cheryl, which is like their comfort level with like jabbing each other and just like being like very playful, almost in like an insulting way, I think is just a feature of their friendship. Because that kind of stuff is not the reason why they start to build tension in their relationship, right? It has more to do with how Cheryl is changing through this filmmaking process, and how in that process, Tamara is becoming a little bit further and further removed from her, or a little bit like more, maybe her eyes are open to like a level of like ignorance that Tamara has that she doesn't really feel like she can relate to anymore. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like that scene in general, what I love about it is just the fact that this is a Black woman on screen with like all the film knowledge. And like, I'm gonna just tell you, like, as a Black woman working in programming, working in film criticism or filmmaking, it's nice to see, right? This is a very white male dominated space, especially film criticism. And so I love seeing her talk about, you know, Repulsion, Roman Polanski, Catherine Deneuve, you know, so it's like, in the same way that young Black queer women will watch this and feel a certain, you know, kinship, that sort of appealed to the movie lover in me, and the film nerd in me. I thought that was really, really cute in that scene.
Yeah, and especially the sort of video store in the 90s, it's like what, Quentin Tarantino and like what's his name, Kevin Smith, right? The sort of like white guys in the video store who are like, you know, nerding out, but also just like ready for their big Hollywood break or whatever. That's the sort of origin story for these like mid 90s indie, quasi indie Hollywood guys. So and I'm stealing this argument from, I forget who, another smarter film critic than me, but it's sort of Tamara and Cheryl are reclaiming the video store space to say, like, this is not just like the white guy waiting room for Hollywood. Like,
right.
you know, yeah.
I think that's such a good point. Such a good point. And also, I just wanted to say TLA is was an actual video store in Philadelphia that I used to go to.
That's cool. That's so cool.
It was nice to see like that being shown in the movie.
I love that. Yeah, there's so many, like, I don't know. It does feel like a local film in that way, you know, like a local film club and like a local film. It's nice.
Yeah, they talk about like the history of South Street at a certain point, or like, you know, certain historical landmarks on South Street. And I thought that part was really funny too, because he was just like, South Street sucks. Like, it sucks now, you know, it's so much better back then. And we say that, like, we literally will be like, ew, South Street so cringy. But like, back when we were like growing up in the 90s, it was like we were doing everything we could to get down to South Street and just like around.
That's amazing.
It was really fun hearing some different places and neighborhoods and institutions mentioned in Philadelphia, and just seeing the neighborhoods, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Like which restaurants to grow cruise girls. I forget, but I had been there and I was like, oh, you know, like Cheryl's cruise girls. Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice to overwrite some of the, like, what Philly is rocky. And I don't know what else, you know, to sort of be like, Philadelphia is a movie town, not just for Sylvester Stallone or whatever.
Exactly. No, that's yeah. And it's really, there's so much like rich African-American history here, like LGBT history, like Giovanni's Room also was mentioned. It's a bookstore in the neighborhood, like a little bit like south of Center City. Yeah, and I believe it's still there.
Well, before the pandemic, before I moved, it was there.
Oh yeah. So
okay, so is there any films that have y'all seen that's similar to this film?
Well, a companion piece, I think, that was also a really interesting movie at the time. And Torres, maybe you can look this director's name up for me, because I think that a woman directed it, but I'm not quite sure. But it's called Just Another Girl on the IRT. It has a very similar style. It's not a mockumentary, but she spends a lot of time breaking the fourth wall and talking directly to the audience in the same way. Yeah, so it is a woman, Leslie Harris. Wait, Leslie is a unisex name. I think that a woman directed the movie. And so in that way, yes, 1992, such an important movie. Another important movie that I feel like does not get enough attention and did not get enough credit for how groundbreaking it was. The representations are super interesting. Yes, thank you, Torres. Yes, okay, so yes, another female filmmaker, Black woman filmmaker, and you see similarities in those films, not just because they're both set in, created in the 90s, and not just because they're, both from like the same sort of, city, urban, vibe or whatever. I think that it has a lot to do with these are Black women who are like pushing the limits of what they can do creatively, and what stories they can tell that haven't been told yet. What do we see in the public imagination in terms of how Black people are looked at, how women are looked at, and what can I do to create a counter image and something that says something important that has not been said yet. And so, yeah, sorry, that was long-winded.
No, that's a fabulous suggestion. I'm going to do like a selfless plug, which I hate, but it's sort of, I wrote an article on the Watermelon Woman, and I paired it with Julie Dash's student film Illusions from, I think it's 89. It's earlier.
Yeah.
That's like staging classical Hollywood production, but sort of highlighting the ways that Black female labor specifically is held off screen in these sort of like beautiful moment of voiceover recording that she stages. So that's a really fabulous film. The audio is challenging, but it's still, if you can find it, it's a really good one. And then the other film that I paired it with was Bamboozled by Spike Lee. Again, like a much, you know, mainstream, like well distributed and I think well seen film, but it deals with some of the same like ugly historical stuff too, to say like, let's look at the archive and how sort of noxious, oh, thanks for linking my stuff. That's horrible. Sorry. But like, at least just to say, like, looking at Bamboozled and looking back at an archive that has such kind of noxious stereotype and derogatory tropes and blackface imagery, just to say like, it's another film that's trying to deal with history in a very different way, but there's sort of related questions about what to do with an archive that hates you, or what to do with an archive that's hideous or whatever. So yeah, but they're not as fun. I would say The Watermelon Woman is the most fun out of all three of those for sure.
Absolutely. Spike Lee comes up in The Watermelon Woman, right? They discuss him at some point.
Like the casting
thing. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a sly, I don't know, right? Like if their only access to mainstream filmmaking is to be cast in a Spike Lee film or something, right? There is a little bit of like, is he really going to be the only one?
Right. And also like, who can I like, you know, name drop that is going to be like a recognizable Black filmmaker, you know? For like Spike Lee was so, I mean, he's still obviously like very prolific and amazing in so many ways, problematic in so many other ways, but like, I think that them even putting that in the movie like made us have to think about like what they're saying with that statement.
Yeah, right. And it does bring up some of the ways that Spike Lee does so many things so well. And that when it comes to like Black female characters, sometimes really doesn't do things so well, you know, sort of. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I'd forgotten that moment, but it's an interesting one.
Okay, so before we wrap up, my last question is, what was your favorite part of Watermelon Woman?
I don't know. I really like, or sorry, Janelle, were you going to go first? I'm sorry.
No, you can go.
So I was lucky enough to see Zoe Leonard, who did all the photography for the film, like all of the like faked archival photographs and the films that we see in the film. And she's just like a fabulous photographer in her own right. So I was able to see a sort of traveling exhibit of the archive that she made. So all of these old film, it was amazing. So she like actually able to see that. It's so good. It was at, what museum was it in New York City a couple of years ago though? So I'm a big tease. I don't know. But yeah, there was the Watermelon Woman archive, and it was all these different photo formats and just the old technologies she used to create this archive for the film. And so I really like the ending sequence where it's that sort of faked but real documentary where you finally see the project come together and all of these artifacts that support this sort of imagined and an imagined archive for her. So I like the archival moments to it where it's engaging what makes an archive. Is it just that we believe in it? And the sort of like putting together that history is kind of fun.
Yeah, that stuff all looks super authentic too. Like she did a great job with using those materials. Because I had to ask a couple of times, you know, is it actually fake? It looks so real. Yeah. My favorite part though, I guess not just one, but I love when she goes to interview Martha, the white director, her sister. She goes to interview her sister, and she's just like, my sister is not that kind of person. Like, And she's like, yes, she is. And I love the fact that like she stood up to her in that moment. And so that was one of my favorite parts, because I'm like, yeah, be bold, like, and be unapologetic, and don't, like, she's not allowing this woman to diminish the relationship, the significance of the relationship that they had. Also, like, that relationship, it reminded me of like Billie Holiday and Tallulah Bankhead. The fact that there's this whole like queer like underworld of like old Hollywood that like we don't know that much about because it was so forbidden, right? And so I love the fact that she's like, like, we're gonna talk about this, like, you need to face the facts, like, this is something that happened. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts. And then I would say the other part that I love is when she puts the camera on herself and there's like the city in the background, and she's like dancing in the sun, just like kind of carefree dancing in the sun. I think Tamara enters the frame at a certain point, but there's this like interlude of just like pure joy. And I just think that's really sweet.
Yeah. It goes back to like what you're saying about her not childlike, not childish, right? The like exuberance with which she takes on the project and does her research and also just like cares. And being invested and excited, I think, is part of what makes this film so fun.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So did you guys have any like comments or anything before we wrap it up?
Just that this is like fun. It's so fun.
And I loved just being able to see Philly. Like, I know, Eleni, like that probably was like, it's really exciting for you too, but seeing Philadelphia in such a monumental, like, Philly doesn't get enough credit for the things that we create artistically, but like, you know, this movie came out of Philadelphia. We gave y'all neo soul. Like, it's true. Jill Scott and the Roots, like, here, homegrown. But yeah, so I just love the experience of being able to watch it again and being able to talk about it with people who also like love movies and love this movie in particular. So thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, big shout out to all of y'all for being here, for talking about this movie. This is a great conversation. If anybody else has anything they want to add, if you want to plug yourselves or your work, now's the time. Janelle or Eleni, or even Debria, if you want to plug yourself. But if not, then I just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in. Whether you're watching live or watching the playback, we really appreciate y'all joining us. Remember to follow us on Instagram. This is Frame X Frame Film Club. My nephew's trying to break in my room. And check out our website, framexframefilm.club. Again, we appreciate y'all so much. And I think we're good to wrap. I really enjoyed y'all, so thank you. Oh, I do want to mention one more thing. Our next film is going to be Education Inc. That's going to be on April 21st. So stay tuned for more information about that. And I'm excited to see y'all there. Thanks. Oh, we got a little trailer for it too. Let me just mute myself.
Is it fair to have business interests be part of public education?
Well, I think it's an odd question.
Corporations and people who have a lot of money believe because they have a lot of money, they got smart. And very often they come in and try to dominate a school district.
Why would I want to add charter schools into my portfolio?
Well, I think it's a very stable business. The industry's growing about 12 to 14% a year.
If you look at their boards of directors, tend to be full of hedge fund managers and investment bankers. The education market is seen as a tremendous market.
This is a school district committed to education reform.
No more reform! No more reform!
The strategies I thought would work don't work. Merit pay doesn't work. Carrots and sticks don't work. Labeling teachers as ineffective or effective based on test scores has been proven again and again not to work. I was wrong, and I'm embarrassed to have been any part of this movement.
This is a manifestation of what I care about is the quality of public services in my gated community. And not a dime of my money is going to go to take care of people where I don't benefit.
They're spending their tax dollars. Maybe a parent values a religious education more than they value a higher academic education at their neighborhood school. That's their choice.
The political spectrum is driving the schools. The educational spectrum is not.
Well, I'm here to remind you and thank you for allowing politics to be part of what you do in this district.
That's a real problem. Probably the number one problem in the country today.
Bunch of corporations get together and get tax write-offs for bankrolling a charity called the American Legislative Exchange Council.
I was never a conspiracy theorist about public education until I started doing my work on ALEC.
Now there's suddenly one big happy family, the corporations, the lobbyists, the politicians.
I value the work of lobbyists. Without lobbyists, where would we get our information?
I'm in The Wizard of Oz when somebody pulled that curtain away, and I'm going, really?
You know, if you look at it only as the right wing is doing this, that's interesting. But more importantly, the right wing and the Obama administration are working hand in glove, and that is bizarre.
We will not move until we see justice! We will not move until we see justice! We are not punks! We are not punks! Educators, not politicians! Trust our team! When I grow up, I want to be so good. Learn all the things I know I should have learned.
Look at these people. They've all turned out to support their schools. They're walking out of schools, and that draws national attention.
This issue was so important that it needed to be brought to the streets.
There is still a huge fight to be waged just to save public education.
These corporations have the money. These CEOs have the money. These banks have the money, and it's not fair.